Hello guys, we're here at GenCon 2015 in the tournament hall, and there's a lot of commotion going on here because it's Saturday. But amid the commotion is one of the most esteemed game designers in the entire world, Mr. Eric Lang. And the last thing he wants me to do is say that about him, but it is true. So hey Eric, how are you?
I'm doing well, how are you?
I'm
I
great.
slept in this morning.
That's always just such a win at Gen Con, or any convention.
When
really.
you're 40 plus, sleeping in is the only thing that matters.
Now, you told me before this interview, this is your 20th Gen Con?
I just found that out, yeah.
20th Gen Con. So, first thing I gotta ask, what has changed for you attending Gen Con from year 1 to year 20, right? This is like plotting the curve of Eric Lang. As the first year, are you just a player or just a fan, and then now you're starting to kind of...
So funnily enough, I've never attended Gen Con just as a gamer. The first Gen Con I attended was when I was a scrappy young game designer who just wanted to make his game, and I had prototypes I did in Corel Draw on the I think on the Pentium 2 or something like that. It was like and I colored in some of the art myself, and we came to Gen Con. There was 4 of us, and we just demoed all the time. I actually met some of my friends at FFG at that. They weren't at FFG at the time.
So cool.
I met them at that show, and that was fun, right? I remember we got a hotel room on Wednesday night and one on Sunday night. We didn't sleep at all in between.
Oh my
right?
goodness!
Now
what
I'm
a
old.
story.
I can't do that. Today I slept until 10 o'clock, and it was the greatest thing ever.
Right. So last time we talked to you was at Worlds, and you kind of had blown us away in that you basically got all of your prototypes, all your lingering ideas, everything that you had kind of collected over the years, got rid of it all.
Yep.
Just deleted it, burned it to the ground, and you said that you had this freedom and this kind of energy that created in you. So we're now a little bit after that. We're about a year removed from that moment. Where are you with that? How do you feel
I regret
now?
everything. I had no new ideas. I'm done. I just get rid of me.
Career's over, right?
Yep. Actually, I am. So I've actually got a backlog now again of like 20 to 30 games. It happens.
Right.
But the first game, I remember the first game that I designed on the plane home after blowing up my games is actually in. It's actually in right now. It's at a big publisher, like a really big publisher, and I'm really, really excited by it. It's like nothing else I've ever played before. It's actually it's like nothing I've seen in the industry yet. And I don't mean in a way of like, oh, this is so innovative, like you'll never see. But it's one of those games where you'll play it and you're like, oh, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't think of it. And those are my favorite.
Wow.
Right? Like Ticket to Ride, like that kind of thing. I've been making a lot of games like that. That's a lot of family games, all ages, little quirky themes, right? Pandas, honeybees, flowers, like just exactly un-FFG type games, right?
Yeah.
But I still like those too.
Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we've been following very closely this Titans of Gaming that Calliope is doing.
Right, yep.
And you're on the list of, like I said, one of the most esteemed designers in the world. And you made that list. You're a Titan now, and you're going to be designing a beginner game, kind of a out-of-the-box, easy experience that you can give players. So has your experience like designing these kind of more family-friendly games, is that going to inform what you do with Calliope? What kind of a game do you have in mind for that arena, if one at all?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, I've always been working on simple games, right? It's just something I do on the side because it's not the thing I'm known for.
Yeah.
I design big box games with lots of cool miniatures and components, and I love playing those, but I more often play simple family games because I have family. I play with my family, and it's easier to play many of them in a row. So I've just been more aggressive lately about trying to get those published.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, I love theme. I love themes so much that I can't make a game that's abstract at all. So I have to start with a theme or a story or a vibe or something like that. So for Calliope, there's 2 possible candidates for it. I'm working on 2 games sort of in parallel, and I got them. I'm playing them with my playtesters right now, and whichever one, I hope my playtesters aren't watching this, but whichever ones whichever ones they want, they ask for more repeatedly, that they're more obsessed with, that's probably the one I'll publish, and the other one I'll put away.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, we couldn't tell you how excited we are to get that game, not only in our hands, but in our store. And to actually be able to, show it and use it to bring people into games. So
yeah, gateway games are awesome.
Yeah, pressure's on.
Pressure's on. It's got to be the best game ever. your career is done.
Now, some of your more advanced stuff that you've been doing, like Duelist, right, has really seen the light of day. Tell me about Duelist. I have seen the game. I've done some research on it, but I think a lot of our viewers probably don't know much about this game. What is it? And it's a new format, right? It's kind of a digital
digital trading card game. Yeah. So Duelist is my secret other life. Right.
Yeah.
So I work on. It's a digital trading card game, sort of in the vein. I mean, now in the vein of Hearthstone by Blizzard, even though we've been working on it since before that. It is a company that in San Francisco which is made of ex-Blizzard guys. They approached me with this really cool collection of graphics, which was for a game that was going to be basically half Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy Tactics, half Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
I was like, which is my dream game, right?
Yeah.
It's like that's a lot of my favorite things in one game. So they asked me to redesign it for them, which I did over the course of the last year and a half. So we're going for a game that it's tactics stuff on a board, really cool little pixel characters, really simple gameplay. So it's 10-minute sessions with like I don't want to say it's a compromise between the two platforms, but I found this really cool play space in which you're managing you're managing tactical combat with the dynamics of card play, right? It's imperfect deployment. You get to draw your cards just like you do in a card game. Yeah. You have to manage resources, that kind of thing. But just pack into a little 10-minute package without having interesting and compelling but not overwhelming decisions.
Yeah. What is it like do you have any different kind of philosophies for the hardline design of a game itself when you consider that it's going to be in a digital format?
Oh yeah, it's a completely different animal. Absolutely. So I mean, there's the obvious stuff, right? I mean, respect the medium, right? There's stuff you can do in digital that you can't do in tabletop, but there's also things you can do in tabletop that you can't do in digital. So you also have to I try to respect the limitations as well as the strengths. And so digital games are, even though you can play digital games with a tablet and have a table full of guys, it is a more siloed experience, right? It's a more siloed, convenient experience. So I try to design the game to be a lot more soundbite oriented, right? Just pack a lot of really cool excitement into discrete sessions, but you can also create a little bit of persistence in the player's experience as well, right? So when you're playing a trading card game or a living card game, every game that you do is a unique instance of the game. There's not a mechanical common thread holding them together, right? In this game, you've got experience tracks, you have cool ranked ladders that you can do, right? You have a profile page that you can update with little achievements and stuff. That, like, hooking that into this really cool card game design it's awesome. I love doing that.
Well, I can imagine that there was a lot of lessons probably learned throughout the development process of this game as you kind of see what works digitally and what doesn't, and vice versa.
I think we're still finding that out collectively.
Yeah,
I think so.
Is there any lessons that you kind of learned right off the bat that you might want to share just for other people, like looking at digital games? What have you found that is important to develop for, and maybe mistakes that you made that you learned from? Any grand lessons to share?
Grand lessons. So right now, I guess there's two. So right now the digital medium for trading card games is still very, very new. I know there's a lot out there. We don't. There's a lot of talk about maximizing the medium. Like it's a digital game. Let's do all this cool stuff digital games can do that trading card games can't. The big lesson I would say take away from that is just because you can doesn't mean you should. Right? A lot of designers in the space talk about we can hide all this really complicated math. We can have a more complicated game because it's digital. It's like you can't really, right? Gamers are smart, and they respect transparency. You're playing a game. You want to know why the decisions you make matter. So we can't just hide it from you, right? We can hide some of your metagame experience and let that be a discoverable, but that's it. But I wouldn't do it in gameplay. So the game has to be simple, and I would argue that they actually have to be simpler than analog games.
Oh, wow.
Because even though you have a perfect learning curve, right? There's no room for mistake, there's no room for interpretation. The cards do exactly what they perform the way they should. But because of that, now we've trained gamers to not need to understand beyond the designer's intent. They just, here it is. This is the objective truth of the game. So you've got to design a lot more objectively. The second one is to the development process rather than the design process, which is the process of after we've designed the card set, and start to tune it through playtesting. The tools that digital have, like using analytics and metrics to track player behavior and see how they respond to the game, is so advanced, and it requires a lot of design. Right? It's not just a computer telling you how to design the game. It requires a lot of design work. I actually consider that a fundamental part of the design process, and that's actually taught me so much about how to develop for these games. I'm going to come back and develop for a tabletop game using some of those lessons.
Yeah.
We're trying to develop a little bit more objectively and a little bit less based on instinct, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. I've been 100% instinct and experience. Rather now, I'd probably be 80% instinct, 20% actual measurement.
Nice. There's always this fear, I feel like, that's kind of floating around right now in the world of tabletop as digital gets more and more integrated. And we talked to you about this at Worlds a little bit as well. There's like three paths for most people's brains. One is the whole digital revolution in gaming takes over the reality of tabletop games, and people don't sit around a table anymore.
Right.
The other one is that digital rises up and then kind of gets crushed by the reality that tabletop games only really are satisfying when playing with other people in person on a table, and they kind of fade away. The other one is that they kind of just grow up together and are side by side, and nothing really overtakes the other. And they kind of are two different genres of games, and tabletop kind of has that branch. Given that you've designed Duelist now and you have more experience in that field, do you see any one of those perspectives as being more likely than the other? Do you have an inclination for what might happen?
I think we're at the stage now. I'll go on my XCOM experience actually a little bit more than Duelist. Yeah. I actually think that we're at the stage now that we know exactly enough to know that we don't really know that much, right?
Yeah.
Like XCOM is a game that I love designing. It's a very polished game, very polished experience, but it's one possibility, right? And I'm a little sad that I see that we're trying to codify this already, like codify how digital gets integrated into games. Like we haven't seen any of it, right? I want to just go out and try really stupid things and make really stupid mistakes. Specifically, like I'm working on a game right now that uses digital integration, and I have no idea if it's fun. Like no idea whatsoever. I know it's compelling, but I don't know if it's fun.
Yeah.
And I'm strongly considering releasing the game just to see if compelling is a reasonable substitute for fun. Right.
Interesting.
But it's a game that you can only do. It's a tabletop game, but it's a game you can only do as a tabletop game with digital integration.
Right.
Right. And it's not to obscure. It is to obscure not game depth, but to obscure information.
Yeah.
Right. That's something that players can't do without an objective aid. So that's only one way, right? There's 100 other ways. I'm sure there's 100 other ways to do it. I don't want to I hope we don't try to pigeonhole ourselves into thinking about this is the way that we integrate. I want us to just really experiment, because we're in a golden age right now. Like people are buying games because they're new and interesting.
Yeah.
Ask me next year, I might have a different tune, but for now, I just want to experiment.
I will definitely keep up with you on this topic for sure. Well, let's flip the script a little bit and go to Blood Rage, right? So this is almost the exact opposite, right? This is hard miniatures, it's a big board, there's a lot of mechanics working together. And as you said, it's kind of the style of game that you've become known for, these kind of very intricate and complex machines.
Right.
Tell me about Blood Rage. For people out there that don't know about it, you're the man that designed the mechanics and everything about it. What did you want to accomplish with Blood Rage, and what experience were you wanting to transmit here?
So broadly, Blood Rage felt like after Chaos in the Old World, and to a lesser extent games like Midgard, Chaos Ball, and Arcadia Quest, I've designed a lot of what we call dudes on a map strategy games. I love the genre. I love plastic miniatures, right? I'm 10 at heart.
Yeah.
I love toys, and I love games that really take advantage of toys. So with Blood Rage, I felt like there's still a part of me that felt like I really wanted to do a swan song for strategy board games for myself, right? I want to take everything I've learned about what makes strategy board games, multiplayer strategy board games work, take my favorite play patterns in that, take some of my favorite experiences from that and put it into one really, really tight package, right? And that's Blood Rage.
Right.
And it's a theme-inspired game. It's Vikings at the end of the world, Ragnarok, trying to die gloriously for glory. It's a victory point game, but all the stuff you do for victory points is fun. Right.
Yeah.
It's highly interactive. It's punishing. It doesn't have artificial rubber banding mechanics in it, except for the fact that it escalates round by round. But I wanted to do things like I want to sort of punish what I thought were the flaws in some multiplayer tabletop games, like where gang up on the leaders was the way to play, or to just to turtle, let everybody else fight, and you just sit in the corner and just accidentally win.
Yeah.
Right. And Blood Rage is one of those games where if you get involved in every battle and lose, you'll do better than somebody who did not get involved in any battles.
Wow.
Because getting involved in battles, well, you guys may have played, winning or losing, you're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's worthwhile to attack somebody with inferior forces because you can take out their battle cards and keep your own.
Yeah.
And there's also a strategy nested into the game, the Loki strategy, the revenge strategy, where you lose and you actually punish the opponent for winning. Right. So every time you play, the dramatic question for a lot of these games, these dudes on map games, is how am I going to use these unique mechanics to win the battle?
Yeah.
I wanted this one to be the dramatic question is, does my opponent actually want to win the battle and why? Right. So it used a lot of familiar mechanics, but I thought we would ask and answer some new questions with it.
Well, I'm fascinated by creativity, and I would put you in the category of wildly creative. So you're talking about this game Blood Rage and kind of where the idea came from. So where did it come from? Like, does this stuff just hit you like in the shower? You're like, I want to do a Valhalla-based, Viking game, or is it a long process of discovery for you?
Well, no, most inspirations are really fast, right? They're shower inspirations, right?
Yeah.
Or often on a plane, actually. Like after I've just been talking to smart people like you, right? Like, I thrive on quality interaction with people, and like just talking with smart people or passionate people about really cool things. I'll get ideas, and it usually has nothing to do with what we were talking about, but that's creativity, right?
Yeah.
Randomly connecting disparate ideas. But so Blood Rage actually was based on a game of mine called Midgard that came out like in 2005, 2006, which was a Viking game about Valhalla, but it was more of a Euro area control game.
Yeah.
I made this really cool cover for that game, which by John Gravato, which is this Viking at the end of the world, Ridley Scott pose, and comets flying, everything's burning. It did not. The cover promised a very different game than what was in there. So I actually wanted to make a game that cover promised.
Yeah.
So I want to make the older, like the more thematic, much more thematic, more strategic, more complicated, not more complicated, more complex game that Midgard could have been. So Midgard's actually, I like that game. I would redo that game, but I would put a Euro game cover on that one, and this is like the American-style older cousin.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about these kind of the reskin potential that you did have, more or less, with Throne 2nd Edition, right? Mm-hmm. So this is your kind of an original design. How long ago did you design Thrones? Do you any ideas? Is that 13, 12?
So yeah, the Game of Thrones collectible card game, I was the lead designer for 5 blocks, which is 15 sets. I guess that was 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and so now we get 2nd edition. This is kind of a reboot, reskin, totally kind of, I wouldn't say it's a new game because you keep a lot of those same mechanics.
It's actually, I would argue that the 2nd edition is much closer to the original CCG design in spirit than anything in the last 10 years. I love it, and I didn't work on it, right?
Yeah.
Like these, I was there in the room, but for most of the... my goal for this was I wanted to be surprised by this really cool new edition. I love it. I love what they did with it.
How cool! Like, so you come into this, you've designed this game, and then basically you watch as somebody gives their take on how to make it better and improve it. Mm-hmm. How does that make you feel as a game designer? Is that something that you grow from and you're really interested in, or do you have this kind of tug that's saying, I wish I could say, no, do this instead because I think it would be better?
Oh, well, in this case, I don't. In this case, it's the dream for me, right? I wanted to, like, Game of Thrones is a game that I designed for 5 years. I don't want to go back, right? Yeah. I burned out on, unfortunately, pretty hard, and because of I was doing it, design development, art direction, all that crazy stuff. It took me about 10 years to recover from that, right? Wow. And I wanted, I just want to be a fan of the game, and I love what they're doing with it. And I got a box of the second edition. I'm going to take it home. I'm just going to play with it, right? So I love being able to discover it, and I do like the spirit of the game. It really feels like back when Christian and I were sitting in a room, like in 2002, and we were like, what are we going to do with a Game of Thrones card game? It kind of feels like that. It's got that spirit with it. So I love all the extra houses. Like, I would have done that. I wish we'd have done that since day one. I love the plot. I love that maximum hand size and the plot cards. I think that's really, really cool. I don't know about the new gold curve. We'll see. But we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm going to discover it and play it.
Beautiful, man. All right, so if there are projects that you're working on specifically that you want to discuss, those are the main ones that are on my radar from you. I know that you played this prototype game of yours at Worlds, where you have you're these evil scientists, you're building these contraptions.
Oh yeah, London Masterminds.
Yeah, and it was incredibly fun and really, really interesting, I would say is a good word for that one. Something that I hadn't experienced before. Is that game slotted for any kind of a release? And are there any of these other Eric Lang prototypes that we can expect to see throughout the next year?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that game, it was called London Masterminds. It's now called Victorian Masterminds. It's a co-design with Antoine Boza,
great,
who did Seven Wonders, Hanabi. He's an amazing designer. I've done a lot of collaborations actually with French designers.
Nice.
I'm doing 2 games with Bruno Faiduti, and we just started a new game with Bruno Catala, who's like one of my favorite designers. He's like the French version of me, right?
Yeah.
He did Cyclades, right, which is one of my favorite games. London Masterminds, we actually just turned over to the publisher at GenCon. It'll probably come out next year. It's a pure Euro game, but again, lots of theme, lots of story. And it's a meeting of the minds between Antoine and myself, right? So it's got his sense of flow, my sense of asymmetry, and sort of emergent strategy. So I love it. I think it's gonna be really, really cool. The publisher is really excited about it. They have some cool ideas, some cool production ideas for it. I don't have much that I'm allowed to talk about, unfortunately. I asked some of my publishers before the interview if I am. I'm doing another big box board game called The Others, which is the next big Kickstarter game for Cool Mini or Not, which is a gigantic horror game. It's going to be a big $100 game with one player versus many. It's an original theme, which is sort of Lovecraftian influence, but also like biblical apocalypse plus like grim, dark vampires and werewolves and stuff. It's a melting pot of course, kind of like modern day cinematic superhero horror type stuff.
Wow.
And it's a story-based game. It's a story-based game with as much replayability as I could possibly stick in there.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm doing some demos for it today. It's about a 90-minute game. Another big complex game line. It's like nothing else I've done before, which I really, really like. It's a game that's all based on atmosphere, which I think is I'm excited for it.
Yeah. Well, we constantly see these games evolve, and certainly this Gen Con, maybe above all others, I've seen more different and ambitious types of games than I have in the past. And the games that you're talking about say, this is a beautiful concept that I just haven't really done before, haven't explored before, didn't even know existed. So where do you see the future of tabletop game design, right? So if you close your eyes and you project 5-10 years ahead, do you see anything that's going to happen to kind of revolutionize this space? Is it just continual improvements? What's kind of your vision for the future here?
What's going to revolutionize the space? I don't see it, because if I did, I'd be doing it, right? So
maybe you are.
Who knows, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
There will be more, for sure. There'll be more digital integration in games. I don't know if there'll be a ton. It's one of the unintended consequences of doing XCOM as such a big polished game is I think we might have intimidated some designers, and I encourage people to try. Right, it doesn't have to be as polished as XCOM. Just try, make mistakes, see what happens. I do suspect there'll be. I think the innovation's happening in games all the time. There's going to be a lot more what I call cult games, right? Games for a pretty specific audience that just do something quirky, something interesting, something new. They may not sell a ton, but they'll sell a lot more than they used to in the past. I think there'll probably be a lot a lot of innovation in the monetization model of board games, I think. As you see, board game cafes like Snakes and Lattes start to emerge everywhere. Designers like myself, I'm starting to think a little bit more about that space. Like, what's unique about that particular space that we could make games to maximize and appeal to. There will probably be a new monetization model around that. That's my prediction.
How interesting. Can you expand on this concept of, are we now going to start designing games for particular environments? So, and with that assumption in mind, have we been doing that previously, the past 20 years?
Well, I don't know about we, but I'll say, I can't speak for designers everywhere, but I'll speak for myself. I mean, so I design games for players only, right? So whenever I play a game, mechanics are cool and all that stuff, but they're tools. That's all they are. So when I think about a game, ultimately, I think about who's it for? What kind of group's it for? What kind of dynamic is it for? And why? And general. That's a broad question, but we think a lot about the table, the family game table, right, or the friend game table, which are two different environments. Family game table is served by games like Ticket to Ride very well. The friend game table is served by FFG type games very, very well. I do think that the gathering space of something like Snakes and Lattes, which people that may not always know each other, right, but come to play in a new environment. To me, that's a discovery environment, right? So it's an environment where people are getting together and they're navigating their overall board game experience as a group, right? As a disparate group. Some will come in, some will leave, some come in, some will exit. I think that's really, really cool, and there's some play in there, I think, that we can make games around.
So cool. The last thing I'll ask you, I know you're a busy man at GenCon 2015. What are you most excited about right now in tabletop games?
What am I most excited about? Honestly, I'm excited about making mistakes again, right? A lot of us are playing it a little safe, and safe is good, right? Safe makes really good, really polished games. Blood Rage is a bit of a safe game, but it's safe because I worked on it for so long. I want to explore new questions, but we polish the heck out of it. I'm excited about making games that just completely crash and burn and are so awful we never want to see it again, but I learned something from, right? So just trying new things and making new mistakes is really what I'm all about right now.
All right, Eric, thank you so much for taking the time. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. This has been Eric Lang. As I said, game designer extraordinaire. Check out anything that this guy does. It's all fantastic. Or maybe a huge mistake. You never know.
You never know.
So we got more from GenCon coming. Thank you, guys.